Time now for a check of our top stories. A dire situation is happening in the British Virgin Islands. A huge spike in COVID-19 cases is taking a toll there, with more than 17% of the population currently testing positive for COVID-19. Now, as of Thursday, they're seeing 1,559 active cases. In comparison, the most active cases in the U.S. Virgin Islands has been 200. And the USVI is 3 times the size of the BVI. Hospitals there are now overwhelmed as more than 100 hospital workers are affected by COVID or are in quarantine. Thursday, U.S. Virgin Islands Governor Albert Bryan Jr. said his administration is doing everything they can to help the BVI with resources and assistance. As the situation is now a crisis in the BVI, Bryan says residents in the USVI need to get vaccinated.
We will continue to do everything we can to give as much support as we can to the British Virgin Islands. Preliminary reports say that they expect their active cases to get to as high as 5,000. So it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. So we have to make sure that we are taking care of not only them, but ourselves. What we want to make sure is that you are taking advantage of every opportunity to get vaccinated. You know, of all these people that are sick and people who have passed away, none of them have been vaccinated people.
And because of the huge spike in cases in the BVI, Governor Albert Bryan says effective Monday, anybody traveling from the BVI to the USVI will have to submit a negative COVID-19 test within 48 hours of departure. And meantime, FBI and Haitian agents searched and collected evidence at the home of late Haitian President Jovenel Moïse on Thursday. A U.S. senior administration official said charges could be brought in the United States related to the killing of Moïse. Moïse was fatally shot last week at his Port-au-Prince home by what Haitian authorities describe as a unit of assassins, including 26 Colombians and 2 Haitian Americans. The assassination has pitched the already troubled Caribbean nation into chaos, coming during a surge in gang violence that has displaced thousands and hampered economic activity in the poorest country in the Americas. And U.S. President Joe Biden is attacking the Cuban government, saying the country is a, quote, failed state. Now that comes after mass protests all across the island. Patrick Oatman brings us more from Havana.
The war of words between the Biden administration and Cuban officials continues to heat up after President Joe Biden at a news conference on Thursday said he thought Cuba was, quote, a failed state that represses its people. He offered to restore the internet that the Cuban government took down following the unprecedented protests this week, and even offered to send vaccines to Cuba, but only if an international organization administered those vaccines, that he doesn't trust the Cuban government to do so. Cuban officials have already been hitting back, saying that they make vaccines in Cuba, they don't need any from Washington, and that Biden should butt out of Cuba's internal affairs. Earlier, Biden had said that he wanted Cuba to get out of the way of the protests, not stop them anymore, not take down the internet. But Cuban officials have defied his demands. They've continued to crack down on the protesters. They've suspended much of the internet here. There's still certain social media sites and other sites that Cubans cannot access to keep them from organizing protests and uploading photos. So the Cuban government's position remains very, very clear that despite whatever is said by the U.S. president, they will continue, they say, to do whatever is necessary to defend the revolution. Patrick Ottman, CNN Havana.
And that was Patrick Ottman reporting. Well, from health and safety to education and the environment, leaders in the Turks and Caicos released details on how they plan to spend its annual budget. Our One Caribbean News' Deandra Hamilton breaks it all down.
The new budget for the Turks and Caicos is only slightly more than the year before, but given that 2020 had to survive the crippling impact on travel and negative economic growth caused by the coronavirus pandemic, even a little more is much. In his first budget communication to the Turks and Caicos as premier, Washington Mizik reflected on the successes, the blessings, and the economic recovery plan.
We have made several strategic capital development decisions geared towards making the recovery more robust and quicker. We expect to begin several large-scale development projects on multiple islands. And even with the pandemic, the construction sector grew at about 3.5% in 2020.
The new PNP administration proposes national spending at $342.9 million. The top 10 allocations were revealed as public services with 36% of the budget, health at $75 million or 22% of the budget, public order and safety gets $54.7 million, education is fourth with $36.9 million, and rounding out the top 5 is economic affairs at $20.9 million or 7% of the budget. Social and environmental protection, housing and community amenities, recreation, culture and religion, and defense also drew significant allocations, which placed them in the top 10. Though the TCI's economy is forecast to grow by 5%, the islands will over 3 years borrow $100 million to support strong cash flows. The premier said the country has suffered a painful lesson in putting all of its eggs in the tourism basket. Financial services and small business development have attracted considerable budgetary increases.
In that regard, we need to reform, reboot, and restore. Mr. Speaker, we did not come for this work to be ordinary.
The budget was passed on June 30th.
And American parents should start checking their bank accounts. The child tax credit is starting to get doled out. Starting Thursday, the IRS began sending out hundreds of dollars a month as an economic stimulus. And our Washington correspondent Mac Nadler explains how long this will be lasting.
Let's say you're a family of 4 with 2 little ones under the age of 18. You could receive an additional $500 to $600 per month from the IRS starting today. That's because of the expanded child tax credit included in the COVID relief package President Biden signed in March.
This has the potential to reduce child poverty in the same way that the Social Security reduced poverty for the elderly.
The credit now covers 2 age ranges. It will go from $2,000 to $3,600 for children under age 6 and up to $3,000 for children ages 6 to 17. The Treasury Department will send out advance payments every month through December. Parents will receive the remaining half of their credit when they file their 2021 tax returns. Lawmakers hope it will serve as an economic stimulus for families still recovering from the pandemic,
which could help us cut child poverty by as much as 45%. This is the largest anti-poverty measure in decades.
But if you don't see the money in your bank account today, don't panic just yet. Officials from the IRS tell us there is still a backlog of 2020 tax refunds and even stimulus checks to process.
We're still under certain health protocols due to COVID, so we're doing the best that we can with what we can and what we're legally allowed to, but there are some delays.
The Treasury Department and IRS say they sent out $15 billion worth of payments, reaching more than 60 million children in this first round. The money can be used for several things: housing, food, childcare, and more. And there is no limit to how many children can receive the benefit. Now, we'll have more information, including details on how to receive the tax credit, even if you weren't required to file taxes in 2020. All of that information over on our website. In Washington, Mac Nadler reporting.